there. Good for you that you're helping out with this effort. So I'm going to go through the steps, and you'll also have instructions, and then this will be your sample. So here we go. First of all, you're going to go to the iron, and you are going to press the bottom of the pieces. This is the front, so you've got a front of the mask. It's the fabric with a nice pattern on it, and you've got the back of the mask, which is lining, okay? So here we want to, first to do the bottom, we want to get that finished off. We're going to press up 1/2 inch because we want to sew in a double 1/4 inch hem. So this is the bottom. This is going to be for a pocket, and the pocket is going to be used by the nurse to put a filter in. So we're pressing up 1/2 inch. Do you see this on my ironing board? I've got the 1/2 inch mark in here. So it's easy to fold it up 1/2 inch because you just go by the mark on the table. Okay, next we go and we're going to sew this in. And we're going to sew in our double 1/4 inch hem. So we've pressed it up 1/2 inch, but we want to tuck in the raw edge. Turn it under 1/4 inch, start it into your machine, and sew in. This is called a double 1/4 inch seam. So I just tuck it under, make it smooth, make it even. You don't want it wide and narrow. You want to have a nice straight seam there. Tuck under the 1/4 inch, go onto the lining, and stitch that in. You can use just one color thread. You can use white on everything, and I'll send some white thread home with your dad. Okay. You can kind of do this assembly line style, or you can do it one at a time. So here's the bottom of the front done, and the bottom of the back. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to mark in the tucks in the side. So we want to mark the tucks on the side because there's 2 tucks. There's an upper tuck and a bottom tuck. You need that tuck to form the mask properly. You will see that the pattern is a little bit different size than the actual fabric. And the reason is that we've just changed the size of it a little bit. We thought that this was too small, so we made it a little bit bigger, okay? So here, line up the bottom hem with the bottom hem. We have a bottom tuck, that's 1 inch, and we have a top tuck. So if you don't have a fabric marker, you can just use a pencil, but make sure your pencil line doesn't go into the fabric. This is a purple marker. This will fade away. So here's the bottom tuck on the one side, and here's the top tuck, bottom tuck. So you've got the 2 marks here and the 2 marks here. Bottom tuck, top tuck. Now let's go to the iron and press these in. Okay, so here's our top tuck. We want to take that, press that, and bring that down. See how the tucks go? The tucks go down. The tucks don't go up like that, they go down. So let's just press this top, line up the line, the mark on the one side, press over to the other side, and then the top mark comes down and meets the bottom mark. So it's a 1 inch from the top to the bottom, from this mark to this mark. So when we press it in, we've got a 1/2 inch tuck. Okay, that's the top tuck. Let's do the same for the bottom. When you're pressing the bottom one, make sure that you don't press out your top tuck. Bring that line right up. See that line? You bring that right up to that line and press it in. So So there's the front with the 2 tucks pressed in. See how nice that looks? And then the same for the lining. So you see that, Claire? They're the same size, all tucked up. That's pressed in, that's pressed in. Now what we need to do to keep the tucks in there is something called stay stitch. So we're going to stitch down this side and this side of the top, and this side and this side of the bottom. So back to the machine we go. But normally when I'm doing this, Claire, I'm doing about 10 to 15 at the same time. So I'm doing all of these steps for about 15 masks. So this is stay stitching. This is just stitching the pleats in place, because right now without stitching that can pop open. And when you're stitching down the pleats, make sure, just check, double check that your 2 lines have matched up. That's kind of an important step. You really want to have that matching, because then otherwise you have uneven sides. So make sure it's matched. See, I'm not using any pins. You don't really have to use pins. There's only one spot you have to use some pins, so we'll go through that in a minute. And this is a 1/4 inch. It's a little bit smaller than a 1/4 inch. So a little bit under a 1/4 of an inch. Here's your front, it's stitched up ready, and here's your back. It's stitched up and ready. And this is the bottoms. Now you want to take it and you want to sew them together across the top. And what I do here at this point is I'm just going to check to see that they're the same size. My lining is a little bit smaller. I'm just going to see that I've got the bottoms matched up, lined up, but in matching up the bottom, the top is off a little bit, but that's okay. I'm going to let the top be off a little bit. Make sure your sides are lined up. It's not shifted over. Line up your sides, line up your bottom, and here, see this on this side, the top of our back and the top of our front match, but here on this side, the bottom drops a little bit. Just allow it to drop a little bit, because we want to have this lined up at the bottom. That's going to be important. Okay, so our top seam is going to be a 1/4 of an inch, but I'm going to make it a little bit more than a 1/4 of an inch, just to adjust for this little bit. So it's going to be more like a 3/8 of an inch seam allowance. Main thing is that you keep it even across the whole top. So that's the top, the front and the back sewn together. We want to take this seam and we want to press it open. Press the seam open. Make sure that when you press it, you're not unpressing your tucks. You see that? I laid the front nice and flat and the back nice and flat. It's not all pulled open, because when you run the iron over it, you don't want to mess that up. So you've got your seam nicely pressed open. Then you want to press the top flat, and you want to press it right along that seam, right along that seam. There it is. Now what we're going to do is we're going to stitch the sides together. So we want to take it and bring it again right sides together and stitch the sides. Okay? So let's take it back to the machine. So when we stitch the sides together, we're also going to sew the ties in. So lay a tie oh, just a smidge down from the top seam. Just a little bit. Don't bring it right up into it. And put a pin in here. Here's where you also have to use a pin. You want to come up nice and close, but you don't want it to have it too close. These ties kind of flatten a little bit when you sew them, so you don't want to go too close. And just put one pin right through the tie. Okay, so there's the top on the right, and here's the top tie on the left. Bring your ties down so it doesn't interfere with your sewing. You don't want to sew the rest of it into the seam, only the top edge. Okay, so let's bring the lining down this way. Now for the bottom ones, I just lay them in. I don't pin them in, but you could pin them in if you wanted to. So here's the top. Lay down the tie, and then here's the back. Make sure that your bottom edges are meeting. You don't want to have the back of the mask sticking out or the front of it sticking out. You want to have that bottom edge lined up nice. This is also going to be a 1/4 inch seam, so the seams are maybe a little bit more. And what you want to do is you kind of want to watch that your tucks are lining up nicely. And here's the top edge. And I also grab the top edge and pull it because you don't want to come to the top and have too much lining or too much of the face fabric. So there's the one seam sewn in with the 2 ties. And then here's the other seam on this side. Again, just maybe a hair more than a 1/4 inch. Retrace, you want to do nice retracing at your seams because you don't want things to fall apart. Okay, we've stitched in the top. We're going to lay the tie at the bottom here. Put the lining on top of it. Make sure that our bottom edges line up. Let's see if our tucks line up. Everything looks like it's lined up nicely. That is great. Stitch down, retrace at the bottom, and trim your thread. You can later, at the very end, go back and clean up all your threads. I'm taking the 2 pins out of the top corner, and I just want to trim out a little bit of this extra bulk. Don't go past your stitching, but it's easier if you can just take out a little bit of that. Okay, here we go. Turning it right side out. Now I have lost my handy dandy corner poker outer, so I'm just using the scissors, but maybe your dad can come up with something. My little poker outer is a little wooden, little pointy thing, but it pops out the corners because you want to have nice square corners. You don't want to have rounded corners. So we're popping
maybe like a chopstick or something?
Yeah, like a little stick with a little bit of a pointed edge. So here we go. Here's the front. Here's the back. Now what we want to do is we want to make a pocket in the top. On the pattern here, it shows you the top pocket. In this top pocket, the top pocket has a little bit of an opening in it. The reason it has an opening is that the nurse or whatever can put a pipe cleaner in there, and then they can use the pipe cleaner just to form around their nose, and that gives it a nice tight fit. So this is a 4-inch pocket. I'm laying it on the pattern. Now you see the pattern doesn't line up with the fabric. The reason is that we have made the pattern a little bit wider. We thought this one was too narrow. So you just center the pattern on your mask, mark the beginning of the pocket, 4 inches over the end of the pocket, and I mark this 3/4 inch back. That's where we have to have the opening. I'm just going to bring this line down. Maybe I'll send a marker home with you, Claire, so that you can use a marker and a ruler So this is the start of the pocket, this is the end of the pocket, and that's where we have the opening there. Here's where we're going to lay down the ruler, and I mark the 1/2 inch. And I like doing this because this helps to know where to turn it here. And here's where we stop, and then we start again to make the end of the pocket. Okay, so let's do the pocket, and then we'll do the sides. So here, again, we're using quite small stitches too. So here, we're going down, up, and down. Don't use large stitches. So, whoopsie Casey, I meant to leave the needle in as I pivoted. I should have left the needle in. Right there. Leave the needle in, lift the presser foot, pivot, and also retrace off at this corner, and just bring it down to the opening. Don't go past the opening. Retrace here. Lift up your presser foot and come to the end. And this is the other end here. Just go down, up, and down again. If we didn't retrace, then the first time the nurse used this little pocket, so she will go in here, go through that little 3/4 of an inch opening, and push in her pipe cleaner to give her a formed mask. What we want to do is we want to stay stitch the sides. We want to stay stitch them a little bit more than the 1/4 inch, about a 3/8 inch, because see all these raw edges here? We don't want to have these raw edges sticking out. This is going to go through a lot of laundering, and also the nurse is going to put her hand in here to put the filter. So you don't want to see all of this cha-cha. So we want to just give it a nice little top stitch. So 3/8 is between the 1/2 and the 1/4 inch. Retrace at the top here, come down, make sure your tucks are in place, that they haven't opened up. Stitching down, making sure that your bottoms are lined up here too. Right down here, okay, that looks good. Thread got caught in there. Okay, there we go. So that's one side top stitched, and then we'll flip it around and top stitch the other side. And then we are done. So again, about a 3/8 of an inch top stitching. Use the guide on your machine. So I'm following the guide here, and follow that line. Make sure that when you stitch over the tucks don't flip up or anything like that. They stay down, bottom and top. See here, it's trying to push. See how that tuck is kind of pushed up like that? The presser foot has pushed on the fabric. So if that happens, that's fine. Just drop your needle, raise your foot, get that flat again, get it laying down, and then stitch over it so that it doesn't create a little kink in your tuck. Okay, so there we are done. All we have to do is just clean it up. Just take your threads and your trail threads, clean it up, make sure everything looks good. Your ties didn't get stitched into something else. No, they look good. And here's a couple of threads that need to be trimmed up. Clean up this side. And whoops, so here's something. Oh, I just kind of pushed that down. One of the tucks had been kind of rolled up with the stitching. So you want to make sure that that's all good. Voila, there's your tie. No, there's your mask, sorry. There's your mask. What you can do when you have the 5 done that you're doing, you can stack them up. Just take the ties, fold them in, kind of crisscross, and make a pile of 5 of them, okay? Good for you, Claire. Have fun, enjoy. You're helping with the virus.